Welcome to Inside RHS.
Hola, ¿qué pasa?
Welcome to Inside RHS!
Hello, and welcome back to Inside RHS. I'm Nick Corral here with Natalie Ames, and today we have a very special guest on here, Dr. David Brown. It's my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice to be here, Natalie.
So I understand that you were the principal at Hawthorne High School for 9 years, was it?
Yes.
And why did you change to Randolph High School to become the assistant superintendent?
Well, I spent 9 years, very happily so, as a high school principal, and I was looking for a new challenge, a unique and different challenge in a top school district. When I heard that the assistant superintendency in Randolph was available, I had a conversation actually with Mr. Snyder, the superintendent. He and I had worked together in a prior district. He as the high school principal and I as an elementary principal. I enjoyed working with him the first time, and when you combine the fact that I was looking for a new challenge with the fact that there was such a challenge available in a place like Randolph, I then interviewed with the Board of Education and was lucky enough to be selected. So it's been a very interesting first 4 months, and I haven't regretted my decision to leave Hawthorne for a second. It's been great.
We actually, because you mentioned him, had Mr. Snyder on here a while ago as one of our first earlier shows.
Right.
And remember, he went around, had a couple of teaching jobs, principal jobs around there. And you apparently, let's see, you have a bachelor's degree in physical education and health, a master's degree, a doctorate. You've been all over. I mean, what have these taught you?
I think the longer you spend in college, in post-secondary school, the more, I guess, depth of understanding you get about what happens in whatever career you select. I grew up in the house of a teacher. My father had taught for 36 years in actually Hawthorne, the district where I ended up being the high school principal. And I saw how happy he was in a career in public education. And so I decided, I guess about my junior year of high school, that I wanted to be a teacher. I taught for 12 years in Pompton Lakes in a middle school setting and a little bit in a high school setting. I left there to become a high school assistant principal, then an elementary principal in 2 different places, and then I ended up in Hawthorne. So I've really had a variety of experiences, K-12. I've been fortunate enough to like or love everything I've done. Randolph and the assistant superintendency has been no different. Everything has represented a different kind of challenge. It seems like a high school principalship and an elementary principalship would be about the same or parallel experiences. They were really vastly different, and I embraced both of them. I loved being a high school principal for those 9 years, and it gave me an appreciation for how mature, when treated respectfully, how well students respond to that style or climate that people can create in high school. When students are treated respectfully and when people expect the most from them, we almost always get the most in return. I think it's important to lead people in that direction positively, out of respect and not fear. So those have been kind of watchwords of my career, either as a teacher or an administrator.
So what philosophical aspects would you be thinking about changing or improving at Randolph?
I don't know that Randolph needs a wholesale change, either the high school or any of the K-12 operations. I think one of the most important things about being new to a district is to stop and listen and learn to honor the local culture. I've been here 4 months. I've visited many different departments in the middle school and the high school and some of the elementary faculties. I plan to visit with every group of teachers in the district as quickly as I can. And at those meetings, I've learned a lot about the local culture in Randolph. I think it would be a mistake for anyone new to a district to impose his or her vision of the place, especially in a place that's as high functioning and has been as successful as Randolph. So my approach so far has been to learn, respect, and honor the local culture, and hopefully make change gradually with input and full participation of students, of faculty, and of the school administration. There are a few different district initiatives that are underway that I'm enthusiastic about and hopeful that will lead to positive change. We can get into those a little bit later. But I think the approach of learning what the place is about before you try to make change in that place is just a way that I knew worked as a high school principal. The high school where I worked has been there for 75 years. I was the 8th principal in that entire school's lifetime, so I know that it was important to the faculty there that I honored what they had been doing before I tried to change anything around. And that approach worked well as a high school principal. I think it would work well as a central office administrator as well.
Since you said you wanted to get an idea of what's going on here before you make any of these more radical changes or what it might be, how long do you think that could take?
It can't take long, and it won't take long, Nick, because I think it's important for people to get a measure of the leadership. People really, in any organization, take their cues from the leadership. When it's a classroom, the leadership usually is a teacher, and it's important for a teacher to lead his or her classroom positively. And then the classroom kind of takes on the persona of its instructor, I believe. I know that the same thing is possible in a high school setting, having done that as a high school principal. I really like the climate I left behind in Hawthorne after 9 years there. And I know that it's also true that people take their cues from the leadership of any organization. And so it's important for Mr. Snyder and I to be perceived as people who are looking to make positive change with input from everyone, all the stakeholder groups, listening to parents and students and teachers. Some of the things that I envision sticking around for a while that are certainly underway here in Randolph is a focus on properly differentiating instruction. And that's a fancy name for something relatively simple. It's a fancy name for what good teachers have been doing with their students for a very long time. It's nothing new, really. And it really, at its core, properly differentiating is teaching students where they are and not just teaching one thing in one way, whether it's accessible to all students or not. It starts with sometimes pre-assessing where students are before instruction begins to determine whether the instruction that's planned is appropriate for the class to which it will be delivered. If those steps happen, and I submit that most effective teachers do that quite naturally, I think it makes for more rigorous instruction. Another thing that I know is underway in Randolph and that I think should be increased everywhere, not just Randolph, is to increase the rigor of the program and the seriousness with which people approach their education. It's no secret that high school is a very social place and should be. That's part of every high school's local culture. But even though, or even as a high school environment is a very social by its nature organization, I think it's possible to use the social nature of students in a positive way. It leads to, when it's done correctly, cooperative group learning that can result in deeper meaning for students by tapping into their social nature to begin with. So that's kind of an overarching philosophy, I think, of any staff development. It should be geared toward what the district is trying to accomplish. And for Randolph, it's an increase in rigor, absolutely, and more effectively, or as effectively as possible, differentiating instruction so that the needs of every student are met, not only in the high school, but K-12.
It sounds almost like you're trying to get more, I guess you could say, hands-on experiments, just things that we can apply to our own lives, and then tying that in with education, just so that it does have a purpose. That's
well said. It's well said. Having taught chemistry for a long time, it was always in the back of my mind, why am I having students learn this information? I went out of my way as a teacher to try to make the learning meaningful, to try to give some context to the content of what students were supposed to learn. I think every time educators try to do that, the learning is naturally more meaningful. I learned a lot about rigor. I know there's a book out there, Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. It's kind of a famous book. I have a 7-year-old at home who was in kindergarten last year. I learned a lot from her kindergarten teacher, who really had the most rigorous kindergarten program I could imagine. My daughter came home with lots of homework every night in kindergarten,
Wow.
and loved it. There's a message in there. This was a teacher who got it, who knew how to challenge students, motivate them to want to work hard, and love it at the same time. If it's possible to do that with a 5 or 6-year-old, it's possible to do that with a 15 or 16-year-old. Good teachers do that, and good districts support teachers who know how to do that. That's the idea.
Besides Hawthorne, did you teach or have any other experience at any other schools?
Yes, I taught. I taught for a year in Hawthorne, 4th grade. That's hard work. Then I left Hawthorne to go to Pompton Lakes, where I taught for 12 years in a middle school, and briefly in the high school. And then ever since then, this is my tipping point year where I've been an administrator for a little bit longer than I have been a teacher. At the beginning of my administrative career, I also I was an adjunct professor at William Patterson, and I really loved keeping my hand in teaching. I always felt that the skin in which I was most comfortable was as a teacher. And it's one of the biggest challenges of being in the central office is missing chances for conversations exactly like this with Nick and Natalie. I miss that. And so I like to create opportunities like this, definitely for my benefit, so I can learn about the operation of the schools, and I hope for the benefit of anybody with whom I interact as well. So I appreciate this opportunity to be with actual people instead of in the central office. Thank you.
We're glad to have you on here.
Thanks.
And it's a bit of a change of a topic here, but I also remember asking Mr. Owen Snyder about his high school experience, because that molds you in a way as well. You
Absolutely.
pick up certain things.
Yep.
So, as back to when you were a child, younger, teen, the adolescent years. I mean, how did your experience define what you thought of the school system?
I was in high school. I was, I guess, what you term a late bloomer. I kind of blended in for too long in high school, and subsequent to being a high school student, I ended up as a high school administrator, and it was my mission to keep students from just blending in. I really blossomed as a junior and senior in high school, got a little more involved, and then college was a great experience for me, where I learned things about myself and how I learned best that made me a more effective and successful student. High school was easy to blend in, and I went to Fairlawn High School, graduated in 1977. There were 610 people in my class, so big schools were the norm back then in the mid to late 70s. And it was easy to be anonymous, and for a while I was. I had a couple of teachers, frankly, who noticed some talents and skills that I had, especially in the area of writing. I love to write, and I had a couple of cool. I had a couple of teachers, and I'm sure you've had similar teachers too, Natalie, who valued whatever talent they thought I had in that realm, and really encouraged me to pursue that kind of thing. And I've loved writing ever since. So I have a couple of specifically a couple of teachers in high school to thank for that. That really shaped my future career as an administrator. I end up writing a lot of things for a lot of different audiences, and it's another skin in which I'm pretty comfortable. And so I have high school teachers to thank. I would say that the one main thing that students should do, no matter what level they're in, is get involved in the extracurricular things that schools provide. We're lucky to be able to provide extracurricular activities in different areas to motivate and interest different students. And even though it's a miserable budget time, I think it's important for a district to maintain a balance of the things that really can save some students from having an anonymous high school experience when they get to do things that they really love, in addition to the things that they're told they have to do.
Yeah.
Something that I definitely agree with that, because college is going to be really demanding. Obviously, you have majors, dorms, intramurals, sports, all kinds of things to think of here. And I guess if high school can establish who you are, and you can figure out, you can narrow yourself down into what you like, rather than kind of soul searching once you get to that period. So
Absolutely true. And having seen many seniors graduate high school for 9 years and then come back and visit, it's really difficult to prepare any senior for how different college is than high school. The biggest difference in college, in my view, is that no one in college really cares about whether you show up for class and do your work and keep up with all of your assignments. if you don't care. There's no such thing as warning notices or progress reports or anything. It's sink or swim. The students who swim rather than sink are the ones, exactly as you said, who are sure of who they are and what they want out of college. It's undeniably a very social environment, even more so than high school. So the ability to manage the social aspect and still invest in the academic aspects of college is what makes the difference between success and failure at that level. And I think the depth of a person's high school experience and the variety of things to which they were exposed in high school is an important factor in their success at the next level.
So do you think that high school from 1977 to 2010 has changed drastically?
I think on the surface that it has, because there are more technologically based opportunities for students. Witness the fact that we're in a TV studio in a public high school. There was no such thing when I went. There were TVs, but the high school didn't have such a setting. I had English in 11th grade in a class that had a couch in it just because the teacher wanted to have that kind of environment, but that's as far as that went. So I think on the surface things have changed. I think what hasn't changed is that students want to be challenged. They never ask to be challenged, but they work more successfully and they are more productive when they are expected to work hard and they're convinced by the value of the work itself and not by the fear of a bad grade, that working hard is its own reward. I think that was true in the 70s, way back then. I just went to my 30th high school reunion a couple of years ago, and it's true today. It's the basic nature of an adolescent learner. The successful teachers and administrators understand that about adolescent learners and proceed accordingly in a public school setting. So I think that's definitely true. There are some surface things that have changed, but I think the nature of teenagers is still absolutely fabulous when they're treated respectfully. That's the key.
All right, back to your philosophy, like you said.
Right, right.
So, since you mentioned this program right here, which is wonderful, the mass media and TV program with all the budget cuts that's going on, how do you think it's going to fend personally?
I think it's difficult to speak for any individual facets of the overall program, especially in a budget climate like this. But I think it's easy to make the observation that when further reductions, if further reductions have to happen, and we hope they don't, but if they do, it's important for the school leadership, for the district leadership, for the Board of Education and students and parents and teachers to all play a role in making sure that any further reductions are kind of evenly dispersed among the things that matter to the district. I think it would be unwise in any district to reduce in one area without affecting other areas in a similar way. The core mission of a school is to provide the best academic experience it can. Along with that core mission are the other things that make or break a student's experience, like athletics, like the visual and performing arts. It's very important, I think, in districts that can manage it, to maintain a balance between those aspects of the school program, because I know full well, I've seen students who were engaged with the academic part of school, but who really lived for the extracurricular opportunities, and for whom those opportunities made the critical difference in their overall education, how they felt about their progress through school. I think it's important that schools maintain that balance to every degree possible. And I think I know Randolph is committed to that. I know the central office administration is committed to that conceptually. So I think the unfortunate thing, Nick, is that we're now in the business, instead of trying to do the most good in a budget climate like this, we're trying to do the least harm. And even as we try to do the least harm with reductions, I think we still have to try to do the most good with what we're still able to provide, maximizing everyone's effectiveness. And that's what our mission should be.
So people can still have an identity while they're in high school instead of...
Well said. Absolutely. It's still possible. I don't want to ever get caught up in the woe is me kind of, this is a miserable time and what are we going to do? Our job is to do the best job we can with what we have, not moan about what we don't have. And that's a critical approach that I think everyone involved in a district they care about should take, which is that we're going to maximize the resources we still have and marshal our forces to make sure that we're all interested in growing the program even as budget dollars shrink. I think it's important to still provide a well-rounded experience for people like you who are about to go to college and who expect to love it because of what you experienced here in Randolph.
And then in the other room, actually, because we're switching to Max soon enough, I realized instead of the PCs, we actually have a fundraising thing going on there. You know, looking for donations and
Right.
things from other parents and sponsors. What do you think about the fundraising here? I mean,
It's unbelievable. I don't think I've ever been in a district that I've been in districts that have had PTAs that did quite a bit of fundraising and that really supplemented the base budget of the school district. And in Randolph, it's really risen to an art form. I'm impressed with the degree of support that the PTAs deliver in all 6 schools. And I guess one of the most impressive aspects of that is that the PTAs are careful to listen to what the educators say they really want, and they tailor their fundraising and the object of their fundraising and what they actually purchase to what the educators say they need and that would be most effective to increase the effectiveness of the program. I really appreciate that aspect of the fundraising here in Randolph. I think it's led to a lot of things for students that would otherwise be difficult to provide in the operating budget. I think that'll continue to be the case because of the way New Jersey funds public schools and what's happening with our new governor and his administration. It's our job to continue to do the best job we can and to think outside the box and get as many different creative funding sources as we can tap into.
From your past experience, what do you think that we could do to improve the fundraising?
I think it's important, Natalie, to not overburden the local taxpayer with not only property taxes that are difficult to sustain. I understand that, being a taxpayer in another town, and also at the same time not having so many fundraisers that people reach the point of less willing to give than they otherwise might be. It's an especially difficult time economically for everyone. So I think the key to fundraising is to raise as much as a district can, but then use those resources wisely, targeted at things that tie to the district's education goals, so that there literally is not a penny wasted. If that's true, and I think it is true in Randolph and is well established, I think the fundraising level is adequate for now. I wish the state's support of public education was different than it is now and that it's becoming. But even having said that, it still remains our mission to do the best we can with what we have, which is why it's important to talk to all different groups of people and make sure that everybody's on board with how the district should use the resources that it has.
and then back to Mr. Snyder, because I just like seeing this connection between you two, just so it kind of establishes something, because you're the ones behind the scenes that
Absolutely.
you might always see,
Mm-hmm.
So how do you two communicate? Do you have to have like almost it's hard to find the word here, but
He
how does it work?
and I worked together before. We respected each other's work. It was in Caldwell, where he was the high school principal and I was a K-5 principal. I was there for 2.5 years. He was there for longer than that. He then became, in effect, their assistant superintendent for a brief time before I left that district to go to Hawthorne. Knowing that I respected his work and enjoying working with him the first time made it an easy decision to work with him again. I think what you're getting at is, should the superintendent and assistant superintendent get along well? Yes, I think they should, and happily we do. I greatly respect his intellect. His views on public education align very closely with mine, and in turn dovetail nicely with the direction the district is going in. And I think that's all by design. I think one of the biggest things that is a responsibility of central office leadership is to bring a vision that aligns with their own beliefs and core values and where the district wants to go. I think we have a lot of that in place in Randolph. I knew that when I met with Mr. Snyder over the summer last year to discuss how Randolph was going for him, and before I even knew that there'd be an opportunity here for me. So even though I left a district that I loved, I think you could tell I loved being the principal at Hawthorne High School. I miss those students. It's nice again to meet with actual students again. But having said all that, it's been a great experience for me in Randolph so far, and I'm committed to working as hard as I can to I think it's a misnomer to say to improve the district. I think it's to lead the district in a positive direction, to make sure that teachers are affirmed for the good work they do. Every single faculty or department with whom I've met has been very impressive to me with their commitment to the district and its initiatives, and willingness to take on new things for their own personal and professional growth. So those are all things that a place has to have, and they're well established here in Randolph.
So in the future years, do you see the curriculum and everything that the school has to offer, do you see it changing?
You know what, Natalie, there are some things happening to curriculum nationally that may or will likely impact local districts all over the state and country. There's a movement. Actually, there were national standards just adopted in math and language arts that New Jersey, was a project in which New Jersey participated. So I expect that New Jersey may soon adopt national standards rather than the state's core curriculum content standards in math and language arts as a start. And there are other national curricular efforts underway. If I could envision any direction for curriculum to take, I would think that it will become more centrally directed. But I still think it should be locally derived, locally developed by teachers and supervisors in a home district. Because the only way for districts to make sure that a curriculum maintains meaning for its own students is to have people who know the students the best participate in the process of developing and revising curricula. And so we have that mechanism in place in Randolph. It will not be a casualty of the budget. We need to still maintain an active and updated curriculum, which we'll always do, and it should have a local component, even in the face of some national efforts in that regard.
This national curriculum, is it going to be more demanding? As in, like, we take 3 years of math instead of
Right.
4.
Right.
Would that maybe up a year or?
I think, Nick, that it's possible. There are some strange things about graduation requirements in New Jersey that probably need revision or an update. I think that the graduation requirements as they now stand are here probably for the short term. I think one of the things to anticipate as high school students, either now or soon to be coming up, would be that we're right now kind of in an environment of end of course assessments in biology and this year Algebra 2. I would expect that process to grow to different courses in the near term, eventually to replace the HSPA, which, as we all know, is the big deal, high stakes 11th grade graduation requirement. The state has changed what seniors have to do who don't pass the HSPA, less of a factor in a district like Randolph than in other places. I think we'll end up with almost exclusively end-of-course assessments at the high school level. I think that may take a few years, but that's the direction in which graduation requirements are headed. I also think the state has rolled out different elective categories that students must meet to graduate. I don't see them dialing that back. I think it's possible during the Christie administration that some of the things the state asks and expects local districts to do might become less involved, because as the Christie administration has reduced funding, they're also dialing back some of the state mandates. And frankly, I hope it's the direction that the state takes, because I think when a district is led by people who know what they're doing, namely the Board of Education and the people it employs, we don't need really as much guidance and direction as to how to create a program than other districts may. I think it should be more locally derived, and I'd like to see that happen actually and grow.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
for coming today. We really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. No, it was our pleasure. Thank you. And We wish you the best of luck
Thank you.
at Randolph.
Definitely
Thank you.
believe in your philosophy as a student.
Thank
if that
you.
helps at all.
Thank you. It does. Helps me a great deal. It's the reason why I get out.